This is the Cult of Honesty, and tonight's topic will be, what is your moral compass? In other words, we are going to get into the discipline of philosophy tonight and talk about that which is ethical. What is the compass that is for our ethics, possibly for our character, behavior, etc. Unfortunately, many theists have put forth various positions that you cannot be moral without a belief in God. And hopefully tonight we might be able to see a much different picture, that morals are not necessarily based upon whether you believe in God or not. Morals may be based upon something that is a little bit more reasonable to everyone. And so I'm not going to hold up the show. We do have various guests in the panel, and in the Google Hangout, and also on our panel here in the studio. And I'm going to allow you to introduce them, son. Go for it.
Thank you. Son, my name is Son, also known as Joey Livingston. But you guys can call me Son. Just you two.
Son of God.
Yeah, Son of God.
Son of God.
Son of God versus Sons of Science. That's who we have in our panel. Tonight from the Gulf Coast Free Thinkers, we have Sean the Sean and Michael Fulford. How are you Sons of Science doing?
Doing great.
Not too shabby.
You know, and I'm going to get to the Hangouts in just a moment, but I just want to say that theists are often, as you said, Dr. Jones, they can be very insulting towards atheists. One of the first questions that theists ask atheists is, what is your basis for morality if you don't believe in God? Because in their mind, atheists need somebody to tell them what to do.
Right. I had an apologist, a professor from one of the Protestant seminaries here in America. He told me, he said, I don't want any more atheists on my show. And I said, I thought that you were an apologist. I thought you cared about people who do not believe. He said, well, you don't understand. We don't need to talk to atheists. And I found that to be troubling, to say the least. And I guess my point is, I think that theists are way out in left field, so far so that they're not even in the ball game of life, not even understanding the true.
I would ask that apologist, how are we going to get these poor atheists saved if we don't talk to them?
Well,
right. Right. That's what I'm saying.
That would be his position. Certainly he's trying to get people saved, but
that's what
his point was
that's what I'm saying.
He's not wanting to do anything in terms of having a conversation with an atheist. And I keep telling people everywhere that we are learning much from atheists, and I'm thankful to have so many atheists on our shows involved in the New Covenant group, because I'm learning a lot from them.
Yeah, I guess. All right, so in our Google Hangouts we have, let's cut to them, please, and let's pull them in. Welcome, gentlemen and gentlemen. We have Bob Graves, our beloved unconventional pastor. We've got Dennis Scusi from the Netherlands. How's it going, Scooster? Turn them up.
I am doing fine. How about you guys?
Doing good. And then we've got Nick Albertini, the thunderous god of science who ruins everything. And we're going to see how that goes tonight. So let's begin our discussion. And I imagine we'll all have some different viewpoints on this. But what is your moral compass? Why don't I begin with the two in our studio that have no morals? Sean the Sean, what is your moral compass?
I guess you could sum it all up by saying do as little harm as possible, and just basically go back to do unto others how you would want to be treated. That's kind of what I live by.
Very good, very good. I like to tease these guys because I love them so much, but I do want to get them saved. Michael Fulford, what's your moral compass?
Well, first, I do want to say you talked about Christians always ask, how can you be good without God? And I think that's an actual question they have. I don't think all the time it's meant as an insult.
Like you think they want to know how to be good without God?
I do think they want. Well, they want to know how you can justify being good without God, without the threat of hell or the promise of heaven.
Yes, because they believe only God is good.
And I do think that's a useful thing to teach other people, even if I'm not trying to convert anybody, and I think people could be better if they realize they can think about morality themselves. But
so you think that it's a good question and that they need to be taught how to be good without God?
I think it's a good, yes, because you have to be very careful about how you approach any moral situation. And if you take it just from the Bible, you can arrive to some very bad decisions.
Yeah. Bob Graves, do you think that God is a crutch for us having morality ourselves? He's muted. Maybe it's on his end. I cannot hear him.
I'm not aware. I'm not conscious of being muted.
There he goes.
Okay.
I can hear you, Bob.
There we go. Come on, Bob.
All right. Yeah, I think a lot of people use God as a crutch, but I think that's a cop out. Personally, in fact, if somebody asks the question, how can you be good without God? And I am a theist. It makes me wonder how lost are they? If you can't figure out what being good is, how can you take responsibility for your life? I guess I just don't see. I don't get the standard connection that most theists make in that way. I don't understand it. It doesn't. It just doesn't compute with me.
But doesn't the Bible doesn't the Bible teach us that there's none good but God alone?
I'm not so sure that I even know what the original intent of that was, but the Bible says that, but also the Bible says when God made man that it was very good. So the Bible says a lot of things. So in terms of like in what sense, so I'm not so sure I'm ready to just jump on the total depraved concept of man and just hum those bars.
So what is your compass for morality? And I'm getting an echo from. Let's make sure we're not sending our signal back to Hangouts. We're not. Okay, and you guys everybody in the Hangouts, check and make sure that you're not sending audio back to us. Bob, what is your compass for morality?
Empathy, human beings, trying to have a more careful sense of what it is for all of us to be human and in this together. From that to derive a sense of equitability in the boat that we're all in. To me, that's the foundation of a moral compass.
Blasphemy. Dennis.
Yeah.
Dennis, what is your compass for morality?
To be honest, when in the past I really used to be moral just out of duty, because I have been learned this way, that I have to believe this way and I have to walk this way because the church told me that this is the right way. But this day I'm living sometimes really ungodly, and because I don't believe in sin anymore, and the morals of Christianity is sometimes not moral to me. Sometimes you have situations in life that you can't place the morals of God beneath it. Sometimes it's very difficult to place it, because sometimes I am not always honest in a way to people. Not to be rude to them, but just sometimes you call that a life or a goodwill of the other. You know what I mean? I know that's maybe not right, but people, you saw, at least you don't get any fights out of that. But my moral compass, it's me. I try to be sometimes a good person, but I'll make mistakes.
Interesting. Nick, Dennis says that his moral compass is himself. Is that a good answer for everyone?
Having yourself as a moral compass?
Yeah.
I think that's the only answer for anyone, actually. I would say that I don't know that I have a moral.
Hold on just a second, Nick. Let's do a quick experiment. Can we mute Bob back there and see if we still get an echo from Nick? Is he muted? Okay, go ahead,
How
Nick.
about
Try
now?
again.
Do I have an echo now?
No, not so far. We may have to bring you in and out, Bob, as you wish to speak. You can unmute yourself at any point in time. Go ahead, Nick.
So, I don't know that I have a moral compass. When I hear the word moral or morality, it makes me think of theism in general. I think that the word morality has a theistic connotation, that is to say, the laws of God, that is to say, immutable sort of laws. And I'm not going to say that morality doesn't exist. I'm not going to say that these immutable laws don't exist. They very well may. But I question the notion that we can know immutable moral laws. And I would rather say that I have an ethics than a morality, because ethics has the connotation of logic, foundationally based on experience or empirical reality, whereas morality has the connotation of divinely handed down or given immutable laws, which I don't contest the existence of, but question our knowledge of any such immutable laws as human beings, and say that we only have a personal responsibility, I think, morally, to have an ethical system that is rationally based and well-reasoned and given the attention that it deserves by the individual, to make really well sure that we act in an ethical way.
Michael Fulford. Nick Albertini says that that ourselves is the only moral compass that we should have. Do you think that that's true of sociopaths?
Well, when it comes to sociopaths, that was actually going to be a point I was going to raise. The issue with them is it doesn't matter whether their morality is internalized or externalized. There have been Christian or theist or whatever stripe sociopaths who simply take it and use it to their ends. That's when you're a sociopath, you lack the ability to empathize with other people, and you just use whatever framework you come across in order to reach whatever outcome you're going for. So they lack any sense of morality, external or internal, or ethics, as you put it.
Sean, sociopaths are just one example that I can think of where it doesn't make sense for the person themselves to use themselves as a moral compass. In my opinion, for somebody to use themselves as a moral compass, they must have a structure of morality that is fitting of the society that they're in. Do you think that some people require help when it comes to having a proper moral compass?
Probably, because there's been studies where they show the brain scan to be sociopaths, but never exhibited any other behavior just because of the community that they were brought up in, the nurturing. If they are diagnosed sociopaths but yet never have a very nurturing family, they really never tap to that evil side. They're just more prone to, go there if something should come up. So I would say, probably some people need some kind of external guidance, at least until they can be taught to use their own faculties.
Very good. Bob Graves, if some people need help when it comes to having a good moral compass, then do you think that a belief in a God from whom all good things come and who will judge our actions and who will give us goodness if we have our spirit in him, do you think a belief in that sort of God, whether true or false, can help somebody have a better moral compass? Okay, unmute yourself, Bob. Sorry, I need you to stay on top of that.
Yeah, no, I don't think it does. I think that if a person can't find, I think what would help, if anything, would be for them to experience natural consequences, to be able to connect the outcomes that they and others experience as a result of the choices they make. That would help them. But to me, belief in a God can just be a substitute for the hard work if they're going to turn God into that moral compass.
Dennis, do you think that a belief in God helps at all when it comes to improving one's moral compass?
Yeah, in sort of way. I mean, if this person or these people believe something about God, they've also already morals with it. And if it comes to Christianity, I don't have to explain that one. But then it's just a set of morals, and I think everyone has some sort of Christianity morals in them, in a way that people try to treat each other. But to be honest, no, a lot of people don't handle this way, and they are actually fighting back, and they don't be in silence if they, they love your enemies and that kind of stuff. But believing in a God helps them more morality. I think that's sort of way it will do, yeah, because with this believing in a God, most of them, the parents will raise them with a morality they believe that their God teaches them.
What do you think, Nick?
So, I think that the only moral God is a deistic God. And the reason is straightforward. The pagan gods were arbitrary. And to make an argument that God is controlling all of these things that happen and that God's will is expressed perfectly in some sense in physical reality, the theistic version of God, suggests that God is extraordinarily arbitrary, and an arbitrary God is identical to no God at all. Nature is arbitrary, and the random, Darwinistic view that so many fundamentalists abhor is exactly the view that they hold about God, which is that God is arbitrary, and only a deistic God that creates a universe for a purpose, a full purpose, and then steps away and allows it to evolve on its own, can actually claim a moral responsibility in any sense, because otherwise you've got a very arbitrary God, which is equivalent to no God at all anyway. So I don't think that a theistic God in that sense can at all, because the theistic God would have to claim responsibility for everything that ever happens, period. There's no way that makes sense as a moral understanding of God to me.
Michael, do you think that stories like the Odyssey or Greek mythology, or even some of our modern mythologies with superheroes, Superman, Batman, Star Wars, The Matrix, do you think any of these stories have value in giving a person a better moral compass?
Sure. If you think of it as an Aesop fable, the way I like to approach any kind of fictional story is it's the author relaying their own personal philosophy. And when you read a story with a hero, with a challenge, with some event going on that the character has to face, you see what that person believes a good person should do and how a bad person would react to that same situation. A good one. And there are good stories and bad stories. There's a lot of bad stories in comic books right now. But you can look at that and see what their personal philosophy is being written out. And that can inform your decisions. There's a lot of people who really appreciate the idea from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. That it is a comic booky kind of silly thing, but there is a worthwhile philosophy behind that.
Sean the Sean, as an actual superhero, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. I agree that if you can put in front of people where they can watch it play out themselves, what happens when you do something good in spite of rescuing people like superheroes and things like that. I think that's a useful message to show. But kind of back when we were talking about sociopaths, though, and having a theistic God, I think someone who's a sociopath, that could be a dangerous tool to put in their hands, a Bible, because they can find stuff to justify, what they're thinking inside there. So I think real good should be taught to them, and then when they can be trusted with it, then you could hand them a Bible, I guess.
So people should only read the Bible when they can be trusted with it.
It should have a parental advisory
you need a
on
license
it.
to read the Bible.
Do what?
You need a Bible reading license, a Bible license.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's. Dr. Jones, am I taking this in the direction that you had in mind? Do you want to pitch throw something in here?
Let me suggest a few things. Number one, if we are talking about morals / ethics, just for the sake of argument, let's talk about philosophical ethics. Let's talk about religious ethics. Let's talk about cultural ethics and morals. Let's talk about, hey, listen, the reason I did X, Y, and Z when I was a kid, it's because mom and dad said so. Things of that nature. Where my wife and I were talking this morning, why did we do what we did when we were children? Why has that changed so much? Were we more influenced by religion? And did that change over time? I mean, what's happening now? In other words, I think it's extremely important that we address why things are changing so much, because I think that each and every one of us can say, well, at one particular time in my history, my compass was that.
Right.
And something changed it. It might have been a cultural shift, or it might have been a religious paradigm shift, or possibly a philosophical one. And so let's talk about those things for a few minutes.
Something that you're touching on for me, and please tell me if I'm not really going in the direction that you're suggesting, but when it was suggested by Nick Albertini that we should look to ourselves for our moral compass, and I understand to some extent what he's saying, but I feel like the moral compass that I have within myself is built upon the people that were in my life, all my life. I have walked away from religion, for example, and I now am a person who does not find who doesn't make decisions based upon what would Jesus do, or what do I think God's will is. But I can't deny that my morality has roots within the churches that I was brought up in, not solely, and certainly not the structure, but the people that were in it. I had a lot of friends in my church youth group who I grew up with and was influenced by. I had at least one minister that I can think of in a church that had a great influence on my morality. But they weren't my only influences, And so as we walk away from church, I think we must be fair about what we're saying. We're not saying that people in church have no morals. Or no moral compass, but I think that all of us need to be honest about where our moral compass came from, because none of these people that I got a moral compass from got their moral compass from God. They got their moral compass from other people in their lives. And our moral compasses, wherever we came from, were built upon our experiences in this world, largely with people. Don't you think?
Yeah. There's a gentleman, and I think that Nick was, in a sense, talking about a theist like this. Ravi Zacharias, he's actually a philosopher with the Protestant movement. And he makes the claim that we do have a moral code. And he makes the claim that this moral code is absolute. And he says, if you do have a moral code, you must necessarily have a moral code maker. Then he goes into a spiel. This is one proof of God. I don't agree with that. I think that what you're talking about is, this progression that's been happening in your life and how things are changing. And I think that you would even admit that today, as we're building a sense of community here in the studio and with people all over the world through the New Covenant group, our ethics, morality, all of it's changing. We're being influenced. And so it's becoming greater, much better. And when we compare that to our Bibles, we are actually becoming, in my opinion, we have a better work ethic. We have many kinds of ethics, many different kinds of categories that are improving because we are willing to have conversations.
Right.
In other words, my conversation with my wife, wow, that is second to none. I mean, this is why I am becoming more ethical. I'm thinking through many things, and it takes conversations to do that with people you can trust. In other words, people you can let your hair down with, people you can say, hey, this is the way that I look at it. I want to listen to you.
Yeah.
And so when you go back and forth between those two, or in other areas, I think that's what's happening. And so if we can talk about that, because I would like to hear all kinds of things tonight about, has your moral paradigm been the same all of your life, or has it shifted? In other words, our ethics, are they shifting?
Is your morality the same today as it was 10 years ago?
Yes, exactly.
That's a good question to bring back our Google Hangouts in. Are they turned up? Okay. Bob Graves, is your moral compass today the same as it was 10 years ago?
No, not at all. I think that as we grow as human beings, we become far more aware of who we are, what the outcome is of our actions, and who's affected by it. And we're more aware of, we have more history in the wake behind us to evaluate. So I do think that it is constant adjustment. And I'm 61. You reach a certain age after middle age, I think, where you begin to wonder what you're going to leave behind you as a result of your having been here when you're gone, I suppose. And your moral compass begins to think more in terms of what I'm going to be leaving behind me as an influence. So no, it's not at all the same. And I do think that as human beings, that our moral compass has to be going through a lot of change, and that even as we're younger, our moral compass begins as something borrowed.
Something borrowed. Very good point. I tend to think that I'm probably going to leave behind a huge sigh of relief when I go. Scoosy Scooster, is your moral compass the same today as it was 10 years ago?
No, because people grow up, people change their minds about things in life, and that's the same with me. And when I discovered also the New Covenant group, a lot of things changed for me too, first of all. And no, to be honest, no, it's not the same as it was 10 years ago.
Has it gone uphill or downhill? I'm going to let Nick Albertini answer that question about you. Nick, has Scoosy Scooster's moral... No? Okay.
He doesn't know me.
Okay. All right, we need to get somebody. We need to get an external source to answer that question. I'm sure it's gone uphill.
You have to visit the Netherlands before you can discover that.
Nick Albertini, I'm sure that you would also answer no, it's quite different. In what ways has your moral compass changed over the past 10 years?
So, well, my moral compass has changed. I myself was also sort of a fundamentalist Christian for a while. I got into the church through actually daycare when I was a little kid. I went to the church for daycare after school. That's sort of where I was going to begin. I mean, people's morality, if we call it that, there's genetic components, there's developmental components, sensitive periods for socialization, little babies and things like that. Then it comes to kindergarten, and I really think that kindergarten and that sort of thing that's the big thing there is socialization, share, be nice, play nice in the same sandbox, that sort of thing. I think that's the basis of most people's, real moral compass, if you want to call it a moral compass. But then I think that ethics develops beyond that, because the basic socialization, ritual that we go through is very emotionally based, experiential based, role models and people that you look up to and all of that. And that's the sort of the kindergarten socialization thing that we do with our children. But then to build on that, we start using our cognitive faculties, and that's where ethics comes in, because the basic questions of human ethics are very simple, right? We're a social species. There's all sorts of things like that. We're very social, and that's what it means to be ethical in the human sense. But it gets complicated when we consider, specific circumstances that are far and remotely removed from everyday life, biomedical ethics and things like this. So, but no, mine have changed, and they changed because of my confrontation with reality through science. And my ethics are primarily similar to those of, say, Karl Popper. So there's philosophers that influence my ethics, certainly.
Some of that Popper ethics. Michael, how about you? You haven't always been an atheist. How long have you been an atheist?
I'm not exactly sure, because it was when I found out about the term atheism that I finally realized I was an atheist, and that was about 4 years ago. But I kind of was before that, so I can't really say how long.
2 years?
Might have been 2 years beforehand.
Might have been 2 years.
So it could be as much as 6.
So did your moral compass shift because of atheism, or did you become an atheist because your moral compass shifted? Or was it a little bit of both?
Probably a little. Well, what I was going to say is that the focus of my moral compass hasn't changed. I've always, as far back as I can remember, my goal has been to help people. Now, my understanding of what that means has changed. And that definitely led me away from religion, because in a lot of ways, religion is not about helping people. People come together and through church will help other people, but the religion itself is not about helping other people.
And what would you say if I told you that the majority of the people that you have tried to help are now invalids?
Oops.
I'm just kidding. Sean, has your moral compass changed over the last 10 years?
Absolutely. If you look even further than that, you could look at how you treated relationships when you were younger, how they were kind of easily discarded in the middle and high school. And then as you get older, you realize the chain of events that you might be starting off, or how that really affects other people. I think as soon as you realize what impact people have on you by what they're doing, you're less likely to, do that to someone else. And as you become more cultured, you realize that there are other people that are much poorer, much worse off than you are, and you just and being an atheist, you really just have this time frame that you're here for sure to kindle relationships with people without any hope of a eternity with them. So you really, I wouldn't say as far as it's living for the minute or live like it's the last day, but you try to really focus on the relationships you have with people, because I think it's when it's over, it's over. So I think it makes you more moral, not believing in a supernatural afterlife.
Out of curiosity, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
What person, philosophy, culture, etc., is influencing you today to be the person you are, that is, morally speaking, ethically speaking?
It's really just a combination of quite a few people. I find myself not agreeing 100% with any one individual person, but I'll take parts that I really think that I can apply in my own life, and I'll take those. but I wouldn't say that there's one significant person. I guess if you would consider Christopher Hitchens a philosopher, I guess he was. He would probably be the most recent.
Just change that to person. What person? What people
What people?
Forget philosopher.
Okay.
What people are having the most effect on your life these days? Because I think they're all philosophers.
You think they're all what?
Philosophers. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Oh well, you would. I would say Neil deGrasse Tyson, Christopher Hitchens. Let's think here. Daniel Dennett. Oh, there. Yeah, the whole list.
T-shirt.
And then I wish I could remember his whole name, but something Pinkerton. Steven Pinker. Yeah, I really like his philosophy. That's all.
That is all. So, no Bob Marley.
No.
Or, Bill Cosby.
No. Bill.
No. Okay. Just checking. All right. Let's turn it back over to the Hangouts. Do you want to ask everyone that?
I would like to hear from everyone. I mean, to me, I think that we're all influenced by various things that we hear, and I would just like to hear what people are thinking. That is, in terms of who's influencing who, and why.
Okay. Well, actually, let me turn it over to Michael Fulford. Who are your? Pay attention, Michael. Shameful. Who are your biggest influences these days?
That's what I was thinking of. I was trying to remember. It's either Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about passion, beauty, and joy, PB&J. That anything you do in life, you've got to approach it with passion and beauty, or appreciate the beauty of it and take joy in it. But the people that have really influenced my personal philosophy on life, you have Carl Sagan, who in Pale Blue Dot talked about the wonders we're able to now understand through science, the good of humanity, because a lot of people tend to focus on how bad we are. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, big impact on my childhood in a lot of ways, and even as an adult.
Fred Rogers.
Yeah. Jimmy Buffett was, because he's one of the few musicians that I had as a kid that I would come across who was actually cheerful with his music, had a lot of fun. Some of his songs do kind of delve into a little bit of philosophy if you blink. And
Fred Rogers was a man who left religion so that he could give children good morals, good lessons. Mm-hmm. He didn't do it within religion. He walked out of religion so that he could reach a wider audience.
He was a Methodist minister. He purposely left all mention of religion out of his program because he didn't want to isolate anybody. In fact, there's one story that I found very recently about being a Methodist minister, and with his audience that he had, the homosexual movement was ramping up at the time, and other ministers in Methodist Church came up to him and asked him to speak out against homosexuality. And at this conference that they put him at, where he was supposed to speak out about it, the only thing he said is, "God loves you exactly as you are," and he left.
I mean, you rang a bell when you mentioned Fred Rogers. I'm a huge fan.
The only fault I've ever been able to find with him is that he set such an example I don't think anybody's going to be able to follow up on. He just dropped the mic and walked off stage.
Yeah, good man. Let's turn it over to the Hangouts. Bob Graves, who are your biggest influences these days?
I really don't have any. I suppose I try to be open to the experience of the various people I interact with, but I really don't have any heroes. There's people I admire, but it may sound arrogant, but me, I've taken responsibility for my own life, that when other people influence me, I find I usually sift it through. I go, well, do I buy that or do I not? Or would I modify that? And so, I think I've more kind of cut that cord in a sense, where I'm I'm open to influence, but I really, I can't think of any heroes that I have at all.
So we're going to make some T-shirts that you can buy that say, "I am the second biggest fan of Bob Graves." Love you, Bob. Dennis, who are your biggest influences these days?
That changes sometimes. I have my periods, like when I'm in a short period, I can have some influence about artists, writers, something like that. But what I look on YouTube last days are people like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Dr. Jones, of course, and sometimes Marilyn Manson. Yeah.
So Dr. Jones, then Marilyn Manson, or Marilyn Manson, then Dr. Jones?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Is it Marilyn Manson, then Dr. Jones, or Dr. Jones, then Marilyn Manson?
Well, I don't put them in this 1, 2, 3. I'm just giving them they're both intelligent, I think. And that's just very personally. Some people can say, "Oh, I don't have anything to do with these people," and that's their right, and that's okay. They're still good enough. But you asked me what my influence were, and well, my influence less these people.
Sure.
The positive thing I get out of this is straight thinking for yourself, to be proud of yourself, and don't be changed, but just really believe that you're good enough.
Yeah. Nick, I'm going to ask you to be as brief as you can, because I want you to answer two questions. There's a question that I had for you and I haven't been able to ask. So the first question is, as we've been asking everybody, who are your influences these days? And the second question is, I want to know, as you walked out of your fundamental Christian beliefs, and as your moral compass changed, the people who were still fundamentalists, did they view your morals as becoming better or worse, and why do you think that is? So I turn it over to you now.
So as for the first question, one thing that a lot of people don't know about Fred Rogers is that he won a Congressional Medal of Honor for his service in combat. It's interesting to contrast that with his personality, as people knew him. I like Jesus, certainly a role model for Mr. Rogers. I like the Buddha. I like Lao Tzu. I like Sun Tzu, Marcus Aurelius, Plato, but not Aristotle. People like Da Vinci, Leibniz. Karl Popper. I like Karl Popper very much. In fact, most of my ethical considerations are in line with him. But I also appreciate people like Nietzsche, who I completely disagree with in terms of morality and ethics, but recognize their points on certain issues. For example, classifications like the master morality, the slave morality.
Now, I realized when I said to keep it short, you were looking at it on a galactic scale.
Because that's about it. Yeah, I recognize those guys, but yeah.
Yeah. So, how about the second question?
When I had to confront scientific reality and come to grips with that in terms of my ethics, sort of transitioning toward a deistic view of God instead of a theistic one. I still have a good friend who's even gotten more fundamentalist than we were at the time. We were sort of similarly fundamentalist at the time, but he's gone even deeper into that. And he thinks I'm out of my mind, frankly. But obviously, I think the same thing about him.
Fair enough. Okay, so I guess it's my turn. I'm the only person that. Well, you and I need to answer that question.
Yeah,
I think that's only fair. So I'll go first. So my biggest influences these days are, I agree with Fred Rogers, huge influence. Dr. Jones is also a huge influence. He has a grip on me that I can't seem to shake loose. You're supposed to smile because that was a joke. That's your last chance. Okay, you got it. You smiled. All right. Bill Cosby is actually an influence on me. I grew up in my childhood. I didn't have a biological father, and when I was a kid, I didn't have a dad at all. I came to think of Dr. Jones as my dad in my adult life. But as a kid, Bill Cosby was my dad. So I'd watch the Cosby Show, and he, I would look at him. He said, I think he set a good example as a father in the stories that he would tell in his shows. Aside from that, I can, as Dennis says, I can think of various musical artists who have spoke to me. Such as Bob Marley. They might be giants. Anyways, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to, Nick lasted 10 minutes, so he took up my time. Dr. Jones, how about you? You ruin everything, Nick.
I think that in the modern world, and we do live in the postmodern now, but in the modern world, people who did.
I do want to say Jesus. Sorry, I've been putting him last lately, but he's still very important in my life. Sorry, go ahead.
The real Jesus here.
Yeah, sorry. Please, back to you.
People in the modern world, as opposed to the postmodern, I think Frege is one who influenced me possibly the most. His name was Gottlob Frege.
Okay.
And I think that it was people like that, and Hume and others, that really allowed me to climb outside of the box and revolutionize my life in a sense, helped me to think in different ways, and I think that's what influenced me. That is from the modern world. But in the postmodern world, I would have to say that my wife is the one who has influenced me the most. That is, when it comes to morality and ethics. I think that she has matured me in many different areas, given me the ability to see things in a very pure way, in a sense. When we look historically at things, I would have to brag on Jesus and the Apostle Paul. I would not brag on the rest of the apostles. I think they were, for the most part, I think they were failed. They were doing the best they could, but they went back into something. They were people who compromised so many things, and this is the reason that I really have problems with most of the apostles. But I think the Apostle Paul was probably the most honest of the people who wrote about Jesus, and I really admire in a huge way what Jesus did supposedly say. And so I don't know, that would be my answer.
But there's only one out of all the people who have been listed here, and that is Bill Cosby, who gave me my good taste in snazzy sweaters. So that was handy.
I do want to go on record as to state this. When I listen to Bob Graves, he influences me. When I listen to Greg Bray, he does the same thing.
What about me?
Yes. And I would have to say that would be true concerning Michael Fulford and also Sean the Sean and others. And I think that, when you open up your ears, in a sense, it's not so much about, oh, yes, I'm following that one particular individual. It's about making these choices inside of yourself after you're listening and wrestling with what people are saying. And I think that we are being influenced in a sense. And I think there is a cultural and a philosophical paradigm shift that's going on as we speak, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. It's guys like Sean the Sean and Matt Rhodes that really hold me back and drag me downhill. You know what I'm saying?
Matt Matthews, awesome.
All right, let's see what time it is. It is 9 o'clock, so we probably need to start bringing this to a close. Do you want me to get some final words from the Hangout before we close this?
Let me close it out.
All right, let's just have. Why don't we just open the Hangout? Because what I really enjoyed the last time we did this was we took a moment. We just opened it for free discussion. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to throw in a couple of thoughts here that you guys can take and riff on or not. Let's see, Dr. Jones, you may have to help me because I think you kind of tied a bow on the end of things. Let's stimulate a little more conversation and let it go. So help me out.
Bob, talk to me about ethics. Where should people look for something that would challenge them ethically?
But can we say everyone talk about that?
Yeah, I'm just starting with Bob.
Yeah. So, all right, let's turn it over to Hangouts and let it go for a couple minutes here.
I think that pretty much talked about that a little bit, but that.
Okay, Bob, you're going to have to repeat it because we are not getting sound. Let's try it again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Not yet. Hold on. Keep talking. Test 1, 2.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello.
Hello, New York.
All right, let's just ride that sound slider. Pull him up a little bit and pull him down when somebody else is speaking.
I,
Go ahead, Bob.
Covered a lot of this already, but I really think that we need to be very honest with ourselves about what we see as the outcome of the various choices and actions that others take and that we take, and to evaluate whether or not is that the kind of a world we're interested in contributing to building that creates these outcomes, and that is an ongoing pursuit. And as I learn more, as I grow, I learn what sorts of things to be more aware of. So I just think that ethics can grow in that way. That that's pretty much where I would want it to let the compass spin, I guess.
All right, jump in, guys. Don't wait to be prompted, and you two also, and the panelists, jump into this conversation.
I think there's a certain ambiguity when it comes to really tough decisions ethically. I think that as human beings, there's a certain ambiguity because we don't have perfect knowledge. We don't have anything that approaches knowledge of the future. We can't really know the true consequences of our actions without some sort of godlike knowledge, and that's true. And the humbleness that it takes to see that there is some kind of ambiguity with respect to the outcome like that, I think is very important to any sort of real honest approach at ethics.
We have to recognize that all of our moral decisions that we make have to be provincial. They have to be based on the best knowledge that we have, and that knowledge might be flawed. There'll be things we don't know. As an example of bad consequences, during the Middle Ages, you had the Black Plague. The thing to do was to go to church and pray. However, because they didn't know how the disease spread, this actually encouraged it. And but they were doing the best that they knew to do at the time.
So then isn't seeking knowledge, seeking intelligence and knowledge a highly moral duty, like a high moral duty of a kind then, if that is the case?
Sure.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily moral to seek knowledge, but it would be a moral duty, which may not be the same as morality, in order to best inform the decisions that you make. Otherwise, if you're just making decisions, regardless of or without the information you need to make them, it can be a immoral action in that sense.
That's my point, though. Yeah. So then one of our highest moral duties must be to learn as much as we can about the universe that we inhabit, such that we can make informed decisions when it comes to that, and also to have some semblance of ability of predicting the future on some social level.
Yeah, we have to be able to know the consequences of our actions, and if we don't, or if we're not adequately informed, we can't know the consequences.
And I also think that when it comes to making decisions, that one of the problems that we tend to get caught up in is as has been mentioned, we don't really understand all the things that would be good to know before we make a decision. That's why I think that there's a time to make a certain decision, the time when it must be implemented, and that the implementation of a decision should be based upon the style necessary to give it the best college try it can. We tend to make our decisions as decisive as we feel certain about them, and I think that sometimes it cuts the options off, and it might sound a little immoral, but I think we really need to, when it comes time to make a decision, we have to acknowledge it. I don't have all the information in the world, but I have the information I have. It's time to make the decision. This is the decision. We are going to give this a good shot. We're going to move forward with decisiveness, but at the same time, I think there's a certain openness we need to maintain, because knowing that we made the decision without all the knowledge in the world, we may find that a little more knowledge comes our way after we've made it, and we want to make sure that we're ready to.
So, Bob, what do you think about people who claim that God tells them what to do in all of these moral ways? I hear a lot of people who are fundamentalists that say that God directs their decisions and controls their mind in some way, and that always boggles my mind. What do you think about that with regard to personal responsibility in that sense?
I think that it is a small circle in their own thinking. That if I have not done a lot of research and I can come to a feeling deep inside myself that some choice seems to me to be, and I actually have that emotion of coherence, I can think that feeling of coherence is actually God telling me. But all that means is that, as far as I'm aware of, is that I'm not aware of anything that would make this a bad decision. But then again, a lot of people who follow God in that way aren't even really doing the kind of research. They think that God is going to somehow even not only cut to the chase and let them know what to do, but that they don't have to therefore be aware, like the moral duty you were talking about, to know how the universe works, so that they're really working from a very small sense of what they already know, and what they think God is telling them to do is nothing other than just that emotional sense of coherence, of entertaining notions that they can't think of any good reason why that isn't a good idea.
So do you think that by giving up their own responsibility to do research, to try to understand the issues that as they exist, and to come to some sort of conclusion and do all that work, do you think that by giving up that responsibility, they've actually given up on morality completely? I would say so. If it's that arbitrary as their emotions, and they ascribe God to their own sort of emotions without.
Well, I suppose they seek some level of consistency. They do have all those scripture verses that they try to make sure they're in alignment with. But I'll tell you, it does give them
very consistent.
It gives them certain moral questions that wouldn't occur to the rest of us, and that they don't even realize are in some ways immoral. I think of a good example of that would be when I was once asked. I used to do karate, and I used to have a karate team, and we'd go out and we'd preach, and do things, and we'd just give demonstrations and stuff like that. And I was once asked to go to a church on the Hudson River, and to do this demonstration and to speak and what have you. Well, when they asked me, when they first knew about me, it was because one of their members had attended a Baptist church where I happened to be an elder at the time. But by the time the date came around for me to go there, I was actually a pastor myself of a non-denominational church. Once I got there, and we gave the whole meeting, and we did this, and after considerable time and expense, when it came time to pay me, when they discovered that I wasn't actually a Baptist pastor, they were morally conflicted. They didn't know if they could, if it would be the right thing for them to part with God's money and give it to a minister who wasn't a Baptist. And they were really conflicted about this, and I let them know. I said, you asked me to come out here. We've gone through some expense. This is you better pay me. We need the money for what we came here to do. The amount you agreed to pay. So but the very fact that they could even have that shows that their moral compass, or their sense of right and wrong, and their dilemmas and conundrums are in somehow based on some sort of castle they spin in the air.
Actually, Bob, it was because of your shoddy karate skills. They just didn't want to hurt your feelings. But that needs to be the last comment from Hangouts. Love you, Bob. Can I make one final comment before I turn it over to you? Okay, so the one thing that I wanted to say is that something that Michael Fulford was touching on and some other people were saying made me think of some thoughts of my own that I have on morality, and that is that I have started to view morality as in a sense, a form of technology. So I think about like if you think about the iPhone, which I'm a huge fan of the iPhone, so I'm bound to use that as an example. When the iPhone first came out, people loved it. They thought it was the Jesus of phones. I mean, they thought it saved smartphones, and it seemed perfect in so many ways. But now we have the iPhone 4, the iPhone 5, and soon we'll have the iPhone 6. And when you compare it, to the iPhone, the original iPhone, it makes the original iPhone look wrong in so many ways. And we would never go back to old phone technologies, whether it be the iPhone or other phones. We would not go back to those technologies, even though at the time they seemed like they were great. We grabbed a hold of it because it was the only thing that we had. And the same is true of computers. And when I compare that to morality, I see that happening throughout history. For example, Old Testament morals and laws are horrible compared to today's morality. No, we would never have a law that says if a man beats his slave, he can live as long as the slave doesn't die. Everything's okay. He's not going to be punished as long as the slave doesn't die. There's a law like that in the Old Testament, but we would never have that law today. But at that time, slavery was accepted, and so that law was there to protect slaves. It was there to keep owners from killing their slaves. And so it was the best that they had at the time. And so at the time, was it good? Well, in a sense, yeah. But now, just as we look back on, I know it's a kind of a very broad comparison, but when we look back on the old iPhone, clearly some things were wrong with it, and you wouldn't want to build a phone that way today. And clearly those laws are all wrong, but at the time, they were moving people forward. They were moving people to the next step of morality, etc. And so that's my closing comment. And Dr. Jones, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. I'm here with my grandchildren, and they are smiling. Go ahead and smile. And I want to introduce you to a new generation. They will bring in not just Morality 101 or 1.0, or just Morality 2.0, but they're going to keep ascending, and maybe they might give us Morality 10.0. In other words, they are upgrading. And so I want them to say something to end the show. Go ahead, Cap.
What you can say, Brian? You going to close our show?
Okay, Rachel says something.
Have a good night. Get this show over with. I'm embarrassed.
Honesty.
Thank you guys for your time, and learn to listen to your kids. I think your children can grow you up, give you a sense of reality, and they really do change us. Thank you for your time.